the vast, frost-bitten halls of ancient Scandinavia, stories were told around the fire of gods who were powerful, brave, and noble. They sang of Odin the Allfather, who traded his eye for cosmic wisdom, and of Thor, whose mighty hammer protected the realms from the forces of chaos. But in the shadows of these grand heroes stood a figure who did not fit into any simple category of good or evil. He was a master of tongues, a shifter of shapes, and the ultimate catalyst for change in the Norse universe. His name was Loki. To the ancient Norse people, Loki was not a devil to be feared, nor was he a savior to be worshipped. He was a necessary force of nature, a representation of the unpredictable and chaotic spark that lives within the universe and within humanity itself. Today, we are going to dive deep into the complete mythological biography of the ultimate trickster, exploring his bizarre exploits, his terrifying children, his brutal punishment, and how his legacy has been transformed by modern pop culture. To understand Loki, we must first look at his unusual origins, which immediately set him apart from the other inhabitants of Asgard. Unlike Thor or Odin, Loki was not naturally an Aesir god. He was the son of two giants, Farbauti and Laufey. In Norse mythology, the giants were the ancient enemies of the gods, representing the raw, untamed elements of the world. Yet, despite his heritage, Loki managed to secure a place in the highest court of power. He did this through a sacred ritual of blood brotherhood with Odin himself. The myths tell us that in the early days of the cosmos, Odin and Loki blended their blood, swearing an oath that Odin would never drink ale unless Loki was also served. This bond meant that Loki was not an adoptive son or a servant, but a contemporary and peer to the king of the gods. He was tolerated in Asgard because his brilliant mind provided solutions to problems that brute strength could never solve, even if he was usually the one who caused those problems in the first place. One of the most defining characteristics of Loki was his ability to alter his physical form at will. He could become a fly, a salmon, a mare, or an old woman, shifting his gender and species without effort. This shape-shifting was a tactical tool that he used to reshape the Norse world. A famous example of this is the story of the master builder who offered to build an indestructible wall around Asgard to protect the gods from the giants. The builder demanded a steep price, the sun, the moon, and the hand of the beautiful goddess Freya in marriage. The gods, confident the task was impossible within a single winter deadline, agreed on Loki's advice. However, the builder possessed a miraculous stallion named Svadilfari, who worked at an impossible speed, hauling massive stones through the night. As the deadline approached and the wall was nearly finished, the panicked gods threatened to torture Loki if he did not find a way to stop the builder. Loki did not use violence to solve the crisis. Instead, he transformed himself into a beautiful mare and ran out into the forest, distracting the stallion away from his work. Without his horse, the builder could not complete the wall in time. But the story had a bizarre twist. Months later, Loki returned to Asgard leading an 8-legged grey horse named Sleipnir, which Loki had given birth to while in the form of a mare. Sleipnir became the fastest and most loyal steed in the cosmos, gifted directly to Odin. Loki's mischief was also responsible for creating the most famous weapons and treasures of the Norse gods. In a fit of boredom, Loki sneaked into the bedroom of Thor's wife, Sif, and cut off all her beautiful golden hair. When Thor discovered the vandalism, he caught Loki and threatened to break every bone in his body. To save himself, Loki traveled to the underground realm of the dwarves, the master craftsmen of the mythos. He manipulated two rival groups of dwarves into a competition to see who could make the greatest gifts for the gods. Through his cunning and sabotage, Loki returned to Asgard with a collection of magical items that would define Norse mythology. He brought back Sif's new hair, made of pure, growing gold, as well as Odin's spear Gungnir, and the magical ship Skithbladnir. Most importantly, he brought back Mjölnir, the crushing hammer of Thor. Though Loki had caused the initial problem, his resourcefulness ended up arming the gods with the very tools they needed to defend reality. But as the ages passed, the nature of Loki's tricks began to curdle from harmless pranks into something much more sinister. This darkness is best seen in his choice of a mate and the children he fathered. While he had a loyal Aesir wife named Sigyn in Asgard, he spent much of his time in the land of the giants with a giantess named Angrboda. Together, they produced 3 monstrous offspring who were prophesied to bring about the destruction of the gods. The first was Jormungandr, a serpent so massive that Odin cast him into the deep ocean, where he grew until he encircled the entire earth, biting his own tail. The second was Hel, a grim entity whose body was half living flesh and half decaying corpse, who was banished to rule over the cold underworld of the dead. The third and most terrifying was Fenrir, a gigantic wolf whose jaws could touch the heavens. The gods tried to chain Fenrir, but the wolf saw through their tricks and demanded that one of the gods place a hand in his mouth as a sign of good faith. Only the god Tyr was brave enough to do so, losing his right hand when the chain successfully bound the wolf. By producing these monsters, Loki had effectively planted the seeds for the end of the world. The absolute breaking point between Loki and the other gods came with the death of Balder. Balder was the god of light, beauty, and purity, loved by every living being in the cosmos. He was plagued by prophetic dreams of his own death, which prompted his mother, Frigg, to travel across the 9 realms, extracting an oath from every plant, animal, weapon, and stone never to harm her son. Balder became invincible, and the gods amused themselves by throwing heavy weapons and rocks at him, watching them bounce off harmlessly. Loki, consumed by envy at Balder's perfection and popularity, disguised himself as an old woman and tricked Frigg into revealing that she had skipped a tiny, seemingly harmless plant called mistletoe because it was too young to swear an oath. Loki gathered a branch of the mistletoe, fashioned it into a dart, and returned to the assembly of the gods. He approached Hodr, Balder's blind brother, who was standing on the edge of the crowd, unable to join in the games. Loki offered to help Hodr participate, placing the mistletoe dart in his hand and guiding his aim. Hodr threw the dart, and to the horror of all present, the mistletoe pierced Balder's chest, killing him instantly. Asgard was thrown into absolute mourning. The gods offered Hela ransom to return Balder to life, and she agreed on one condition: every single thing in the universe, living or dead, must weep for him. The gods sent messengers to every corner of reality, and everything wept, except for one giantess sitting in a dark cave named Thok, who was widely believed to be Loki in disguise. Thok refused to weep, stating that Hel should keep what she has. Because of this single refusal, Balder was condemned to remain in the underworld forever. Loki's crime could not be forgiven. He fled Asgard and built a house with 4 doors so he could watch for danger in every direction, but the gods eventually tracked him down. In a desperate move, Loki transformed into a salmon and jumped into a waterfall, but Thor managed to catch him by the tail. The punishment the gods inflicted upon him was brutal beyond measure. They dragged him into a dark cave and bound him to 3 sharp rocks using the cold entrails of his own son, Narfi, which turned to iron chains. Above Loki's head, Skadi, the goddess of winter, placed a massive serpent that dripped burning, corrosive venom directly onto his face. His faithful wife, Sigyn, refused to leave his side, holding a wooden bowl over his face to catch the poison. But whenever the bowl became full and she had to step away to empty it, the burning venom would strike Loki's skin. His agony was so intense that his violent writhing caused the earth to shake, creating what mortals knew as earthquakes. Loki remained chained in the dark for centuries, his hatred for the gods festering until it became an absolute desire for total annihilation. The myths state that when the end of the world, known as Ragnarok, finally arrives, the chains will break, and Loki will slide out of his cave to lead the armies of darkness. He will captain Naglfar, a terrifying ship built entirely from the unpaired nails of dead men. He will unite with his monstrous children to march upon the plains of Asgard. In the final, apocalyptic battle, Loki will face Heimdall, the vigilant guardian of the Bifrost Bridge. The 2 ancient enemies will fight a duel of wits and weapons, ending with both of them mortally wounding each other. Loki will die on the battlefield, watching the universe burn around him, achieving his ultimate goal of destroying the order that the gods had spent eternity trying to maintain. In modern pop culture, the image of Loki has undergone a massive transformation, largely driven by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he is portrayed by Tom Hiddleston. While the modern version captures his charisma, his shapeshifting, and his love of mischief, it changes many of the fundamental dynamics of the original myths. In the movies and comics, Loki is presented as the adoptive brother of Thor, creating a tragic sibling rivalry that does not exist in the ancient prose, where he is actually a blood brother to Odin. Pop culture has also humanized Loki, turning him into a sympathetic anti-hero who seeks redemption and cares deeply for his family. The original mythological Loki, however, was far more detached and unpredictable, serving as a cold reminder that the universe does not always care about human notions of justice or family loyalty. Ultimately, Loki remains one of the most complex figures in human storytelling because he represents the duality of the human mind. He is the intelligence that can create a masterpiece like Thor's hammer, but he is also the malice that can destroy something pure like Balder. He reminds us that change is often painful and destructive, but it is also inevitable. Without Loki's chaos, the gods of Asgard would have remained stagnant in their golden palaces, never tested and never evolving. He is the storm that clears the forest, the fire that purifies, and the trickster who forces us to look beneath the surface of our own lives. Thank you for exploring the dark, chaotic, and fascinating history of Loki with me today. If this deep dive into the blood brotherhood of Odin, the tragedy of Balder, and the reality behind the trickster god gave you a new understanding of Norse mythology, please hit the like button. It helps our community of history and mythology enthusiasts grow and ensures that these timeless stories continue to be told with the depth they deserve. Do you believe that Loki was naturally evil, or was he pushed into villainy by the harsh treatment of the other gods? Let me know in the comments below, as I am very interested to hear your interpretation of his complex character. If you want to keep unlocking the secrets of ancient cultures and the myths that shape the human imagination, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and always look for the truth hidden in the shadows.